right, good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Arun Ulag. I run all of the Azure data services at Microsoft. It's really exciting to be here. There's so much innovation happening in the data and AI space, so really excited to talk to you. We all recognize that AI is rapidly transforming the world. No surprise to anybody here or watching it online. But we also recognize that AI is only as good as your data, because data is the fuel that powers AI. So it's been incredibly important for every organization on the planet to get their data estate ready for AI. Unfortunately, it's a lot harder, more complex, and more expensive than it needs to be because of this, right? The fragmentation that you see in the modern data and AI stack. It's not my slide, but I like to use this slide just to show you all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of products and technologies out there, which are all in the data and AI space, because this is the complexity that's confronting you today, because the burden is on you to figure out which products to use, which ones work together, how are they priced and licensed, and how to use them to get to business value. That's why from a Microsoft perspective, we're bringing all of our capabilities together into what Satya referred to as the Copilot and AI stack. Everything from the infrastructure layer to the data layer to the AI layer, with developer tools that help you get value out of all of these things. And from my perspective, from an Azure data perspective, we're taking all of our technologies and bringing them together into just two things: our Azure Databases portfolio and Microsoft Fabric. So in this session, we're going to talk about our Azure Databases innovation. From a database perspective, we have the most comprehensive portfolio of database products in the industry. SQL Server, even after 3 decades, continues to lead in on-premises and is available in any location and on any cloud. We have a comprehensive portfolio of PaaS services, everything from Azure SQL DB to Cosmos DB, which is our NoSQL document database, to Azure databases for both Postgres and MySQL. These databases are very, very widely used. To give you a sense of the momentum, 97% of the Fortune 500 use Azure SQL DB today, which is pretty much every large organization on the planet. If you look at Azure Cosmos DB, it is quickly becoming the database of choice for the world's AI workloads. In a recent Bloomberg CIO survey, Cosmos DB across all cloud providers and across all database companies was ranked #1 by CIOs for building Gen AI applications. And if you look at Postgres, Microsoft has made massive investments in Azure Postgres Flexible Server, but we've also invested in the Postgres community. We have a large number of committers who are contributing back to Postgres. And if you look at all the hyperscale providers, Microsoft is #1 in terms of making contributions back to Postgres 17. Now, we have some exciting innovations to announce at Ignite. The first is the next version of SQL Server, which is SQL Server 2025. Right? With SQL Server 2025, it's now available in private preview. We are focused on a few areas. The first is to really bring AI capabilities natively to SQL Server. So we are announcing that vector search will be part of the SQL Server itself, so that you can use SQL to build your AI applications. SQL continues to advance the capabilities in terms of enterprise scale, enterprise security, and enterprise reliability. And we will continue to add more and more capabilities that really allow you to run the world's largest and most mission-critical workloads on SQL Server. We're also making sure that the next version of SQL Server has both Fabric and Azure Arc built in. With Fabric built in, all of your data in SQL Server, wherever you run it, will be available at your choice in Microsoft's OneLake, right? Which means that your data will be available in open source data formats, all part of your unified data infrastructure, just available on OneLake. Which means that all of Fabric's capabilities from analytics, AI, et cetera, will just be available on top of your SQL Server data. The second is Azure Arc. Now, Azure Arc will be natively built into SQL Server 2025, which means that you can manage your SQL servers, you can secure your SQL servers, everything from the Azure control plane, regardless of where it actually runs. So huge innovations coming to SQL Server. We're starting the next version, and the innovation will keep continuing. We make huge investments in SQL Server, and we can continue to expect Microsoft to ship newer and newer releases, making it available everywhere. Now, in terms of Microsoft Fabric, for those of you who may not be aware, Microsoft Fabric is our end-to-end data platform that has been built from the ground up for the era of AI. It has a set of core workloads, which taken together give you all of the capabilities you need to go from raw data to AI or BI value in the hands of your business users. These workloads that you see on top, Data Factory, analytics, real-time intelligence, Power BI, et cetera, have been purpose-built for specific personas, like a data scientist, a data engineer, a data warehousing professional, a BI professional. But they're not just bundled together. We have re-engineered all of these workloads so they look, work, and act as a single integrated SaaS product with unified experiences, unified architecture, and a unified business model. Now, we're really, really excited to bring the next biggest addition to Fabric since we launched it about a year ago, which is the introduction of operational transactional databases into Fabric, starting with a flagship product based upon SQL Server. Right? So let's take a quick look at what the databases in Fabric look like.
Databases enable you to bring your AI applications to life faster and easier, with simple and autonomous management in one place.
I'd say the biggest thing is that we can have our app dev databases up without really having to worry about too much of any of the infrastructure under the hood. It just now works, which is definitely a boost to the delivery teams focusing on business value.
Fabric databases manage themselves with auto-scaling, hands-free backups, and high availability.
It's literally a couple of clicks to an end user. You don't even need to know about auto-scaling. You don't need to know about backup and everything else.
The automation scaling of serverless of SQL database was very useful for us because it reduces manual effort, and we are able to handle varying workloads during the peak times. So the performance is much more better for the end users.
Built-in tools for AI, everything from code generation to vector search and advanced analytics.
The great thing about FabricDB is that it has a AI capability integrated into it that would cater a great business need.
It's very intuitive, especially when we were using the Copilot with it.
Build intelligent applications faster and easier with Microsoft Fabric databases.
All right. To go much deeper into all the innovation we're bringing to Azure databases, let me invite Shirish Thota, who's a corporate vice president. So, Shirish, over to you.
Thank you, Arun. All right, thank you, Arun. I'm delighted to be here with all of you today. Arun has already given a lot of announcements already away, and you've heard many of the things in the morning. A lot of announcements regarding SQL coming into Fabric, SQL Next Generation with 2025, super exciting. I have an amazing team here. Our job is to go a little bit deeper, show you all the more enhancements that we are making to our broader portfolio. We have some amazing demos, so please stay tuned. I'm going to kick us off, though, by starting with our vision. So quality and security is top of mind for everything at Microsoft. So it's only fitting that our first pillar is about being best at enterprises. We want to ensure that your characteristics for HA, BCDR, scalability guarantees, et cetera, are met at a significantly high SLA. We want to ensure that your requirements are met not just in the cloud, but also on the edge as well as on premises. And that's the reason why we continue to innovate both in SQL Server as well as in the cloud as well. Moving up, it's about being best for AI developers. Now, these days, every developer is building intelligent applications. They want to ensure that we, as database vendors, meet them in their tool chains and ecosystems. You will see us innovating significantly in terms of offering them RAG patterns, vector data types natively, ensuring that they can build a next-generational AI application in our database portfolio. Moving further up is about being best at SaaS databases, SaaS developers. SaaS developers are really the modern era of developers who want the time to value to be quicker and basically want to spend most of their time top of the stack. They don't want to necessarily peek under the hood of the databases. So for that, we need to innovate quite a bit in being autonomous, making it easier for these developers to spend lesser time in understanding the databases, more time in building their AI applications. And finally, it's about meeting the needs of our CIO friends and CDOs. They're not thinking about a database at a time. They're definitely thinking about the entirety of the data estate, which means they're worried about policy-driven, secure governance of the entire data. So you'd see how when we bring in operational databases into Fabric, we're really completing that vision of offering you an integrated data estate, a lot more to offer. So let's click into each of these pillars, starting with best enterprise databases. So, Arun talked about this. We take a lot of pride in offering our databases across the spectrum, from ground to cloud, and now in Fabric as well. And this is especially true for our SQL database family, because they're all running on the same SQL engine, no matter where you're running the workload. So you've heard about SQL 25 being announced, and it's a major, major era, so major step where we are ushering into the era of AI. And the good news about it is that no matter which SQL engine that you deploy in, whether it is in Azure or Fabric or SQL, it's always enterprise ready. And on top of it, Azure provides a whole slew of deployment options. Whether you're migrating, modernizing, or building new applications, you'll get the same consistent interface of tools and languages that you already know and love. So let me kick off my announcements by starting with a fan favorite. SSMS 21 is now in public preview. This is a massive overhaul. Yeah, you can clap. It's a massive overhaul of our beloved Management Studio tools, which makes it a through-and-through Visual Studio application. It has in-app upgrades, modern installer, support for 64-bit. We got dark mode, by the way. And if that's not enough, we also give you a personal assistant in the form of a copilot built into SSMS. So that's about like a little bit of a sneak peek into on-premises. Now, moving up, if you're thinking about modernizing your application, Azure SQL Managed Instance is the perfect fit. It basically combines the broadest SQL database engine compatibility in the form of a fully managed, up-to-date database service. On that note, really thrilled to announce that instance pools are now generally available. This enables you to deploy a smaller 2V core cost-effective kind of an instance in a pre-provisioned pool, enabling you to right-size your workloads when you move it to the cloud. On that note, we're also bringing up premium hardware made available to SQL Managed Instance pools, so you get greater rapid scalability as well as some robust operational flexibility. So that was about on-prem. Now we went to cloud to modernize. Well, Azure SQL Databases is the next stop. This is our flagship database where you basically can build modern, secure, scalable applications, especially if you're thinking about building intelligent applications. This is really the place to do it. It enables you to optimize your application performance with features such as performance tuning, intelligent query processing, and much more. It enables you to build AI-ready applications because it has support for multiple data formats, including JSON, tools, languages, and readily integration with REST APIs and even OpenAI service. Your data can be very secure here with built-in controls and threat protections, availability up to 4 9.5. And finally, you can optimize any workloads of any size and I/O requirements with Hyperscale. Hyperscale's cloud-native architectures enables you to scale both storage and compute independently and make sure that you can build apps not just for really high-end enterprises, but even for a small startup that's just about to begin. You don't know how your business scales, so we are innovating quite a bit in this area to make sure that we meet the performance requirements of your business. So let's see. Really thrilled to announce the general availability of 128 terabyte support in SQL Database Hyperscale. Now, several of our Fortune 100 customers are already operationalizing 100-plus terabyte databases, enjoying this robust storage capacity. We are announcing public preview of log throughput for 150 megabits per second, as well as continuous priming. These offer faster transactions, capabilities for improved failover and performance, and better ingestion capabilities as well. And then you must have heard about the general availability of Elastic Pools. This is a perfect option when you're thinking about getting a really good price performance characteristics in a prescribed budget. When you put your database in these Elastic Pools, basically all these databases share the resources together. But enabling that, any database will get the resources they need when they need without you having to over-provision. So that was a lot about SQL in terms of being best at enterprise databases. Really thrilled that SQL Server 2025 is here. Tools are here. We are really pushing the boundaries on being great at enterprise. Now, moving further out here, another kind of a database. We've seen many of our customers look at NoSQL for user-facing apps in addition to SQL database in some cases. So we're thrilled to keep innovating in our flagship NoSQL database, which is Cosmos DB. It has ability to enable fast, flexible app development with support for semi-structured data. Your developers don't have to spend time in doing schema and indexing. Instead, they can spend perhaps tuning your AI applications. It handles and enables access to a variety of data types and styles of data with single-digit millisecond guarantee for reads and writes worldwide. It has breakthrough RPO/RTO guarantees with 5.9 HA guarantees as well. For interactive applications with varying traffics, Cosmos DB has a broad range of scalability with superior elasticity. And finally, Cosmos DB is one of the leading NoSQL databases that has serverless built in, so you can build your AI applications directly inside Cosmos DB. And scaling is absolutely critical in this era. But one thing that our customers ask us repeatedly is that they want to ensure that they can scale the needs of their AI and their applications without having to over-provision in a cost-effective way. And that's precisely why we have brought Dynamic Autoscale. And this is now generally available. Dynamic Autoscale is a significant enhancement over our existing Autoscale. It provides better cost optimization for workloads that have varying traffics. So for instance, if you have a collection that has multiple partitions, and if you have these things spread across multiple regions, which is a very typical topology for NoSQL databases, especially Cosmos DB, it's often the case that traffic is not uniform across all these partitions across all regions, and that's pretty normal. In that case, you don't want your cost and resources to be provisioned at the max of every partition. With Dynamic Autoscale, we have innovated deeply in the engine to make sure that our resource usage is proportional to your traffic. So your cost is going to be significantly reduced. In fact, we've observed many of our customers get up to 15 to 70% of their cost saving, depending on the workload. So that's another major enhancement. Now, being enterprise-ready applies to the entire spectrum of our Azure databases. Definitely applies to our Azure databases for MySQL. This is our fully managed, cost-effective, easy to provision, easy to scale version of MySQL community version that we have in Azure. When database developers provision our Azure database for MySQL, they can spend lesser time in infrastructure management, OS upgrades, or digging deeper into MySQL internals. Let's see some of the enhancements in this space. When you have a zonal outage, a seamless recovery of a server is essential for business continuity. On that note, we're thrilled to announce general availability coming soon in December, business critical for zone redundant business critical tier in Azure Database for MySQL, at no additional cost by default. So even when you don't choose HA as an option, we put your data files and log files in a zone redundant storage. In addition, coming soon again in December in preview, you can use Azure Migrate to discover Azure MySQL instances and attributes in your environment. You could also assess the readiness to migrate to Azure Database for MySQL, obtaining the right compute and storage options with the associated costs. Again, I said being best at enterprise database applies to the entire portfolio. It certainly applies to PostgreSQL. It's one of the things we hang our hat on is how broad our database portfolio is. It lets us take our innovations that we have accumulated over the decades in SQL, apply to other databases. I'm excited to say that we are doing exactly that with PostgreSQL as well. With the support for all the managed extensions, Azure Database for PostgreSQL is a fully managed, mission-critical, enterprise-grade offering that's out there. It really helps you because it has high availability built in without any additional knobs. It has advanced security postures such as encryption in transit, at rest, and features such as network isolation. It has flexible pricing models such as pay-as-you-go, so you could cost govern really efficiently. It has deeper integration with AI services. And finally, it has some amazing high scalability for storage and compute, so you could bring in varying workloads. And speaking of scalability, thrilled to announce general availability of Elastic Clusters, public preview of Elastic Clusters in Azure Database for PostgreSQL. So your developers can scale horizontally using both row sharding and schema sharding. And Elastic Clusters are perfect for multi-tenant applications because you could do online sharding, you could do tenant isolation, splits, rebalancing of shards, and much more. The service will make it super easy for you. Finally, as the application demand grows, you should be able to scale your performance with a simple, cost-effective caching layer. Pleased to announce the public preview of Azure Managed Redis. This is a first-party service that basically lets you enjoy scalability, performance with all the innovations of Redis, such as 5 nines HA capability, wrapped in the security compliance promises of Azure. So that is basically a roundup of all our enterprise pillar announcements. So now let me move to the next two pillars. I'm going to combine these two here. These are about being best for developers. As I said, we want to meet the developers where they are in their tool chains and ecosystems. We want to ensure that we do a really good job so that they can use our databases out of box for AI applications, don't have to integrate with multiple third-party applications, and do so in an autonomous way. Let's see how we are doing that across the portfolio of all our databases. Well, let's kick it off by starting with exactly where we left off with PostgreSQL. Disk ANN is something that you'll keep hearing a lot of times. Satya talked about it this morning as well. It's truly a leading family of algorithms that basically gives you a great precision recall, accuracy, scalability promises. It is truly enterprise ready, and I'm thrilled that we're bringing in public preview to our Azure database for PostgreSQL. This is a major step because we really love PostgreSQL. We love to play with the community. We're bringing this public preview for Azure database for PostgreSQL. It certainly is going to be a lot better on both accuracy and performance compared to the existing pgvector extensions such as HNSW and IVF flat. Really love for you to play it out and let us know what do you think about it. And accuracy of the information retrieval pipelines is really important for the quality of RAG patterns. And here, thrilled to announce general availability of our semantic ranking solution accelerator. This solution accelerator provisions an automated script so that you could deploy a semantic ranking model as part of Azure ML inference endpoints. So you could integrate this as part of your SQL UDFs or wherever in PostgreSQL. Next up is autonomous tuning, and this is one of my favorites here. You think about the workloads. There are different kinds of workloads, different patterns, et cetera. People want to tune for their configurations and better price performance, and it is harder to do in a community version of PostgreSQL. With autonomous tuning, we'll let you kick off a session, basically let our machine learning models observe your workload, and during the workload, we come up with a set of parameters. And we let you know the optimal configuration of the parameters for giving you better I/O throughput performance, et cetera, and just letting you innovate better, not worry about the infrastructure too much, because this is one of the hardest problems. On that note, also thrilled to announce Apache Graph extension coming to public preview in PostgreSQL. First off, this basically lets you write Cypher queries inside the PostgreSQL, making it a really good multi-model database. In addition, it lets you do graph RAG. Now, graph RAG increases the baseline of general RAG. Before your query gets submitted to an LLM model like OpenAI, it can retrieve better data. It can retrieve more accurate, contextually relevant, because it can gather now relationships from PostgreSQL, and that kind of improves the overall accuracy of your queries. So that is coming to public preview. So a lot of announcements here for PostgreSQL. It probably is a good time for me to call on the stage my friend Charles, who can show it all together and put it all in action.
Thanks, Shirish. Hey, everybody. OK, so I want to show you a very quick demo of 3 of the things that Shirish just talked about. We're going to look at how you can automate the optimization of your workload. We're going to look at how you can scale it. Then we're going to look at how you can apply AI. So let's start with optimization. Anyone who's ever touched Postgres before is going to know that there is a ton of server parameters that you can fine-tune and tweak to try and just get a little bit more out of the server. It's a really hard thing to do, and the way that you set it is not going to be durable as your workload evolves. So with autonomous tuning, we do it for you. And so the way you do this is you start in the portal, and you click to run a tuning session. We ask you if you want to restart or not, because some of the parameters in Postgres require a restart to take effect. So we'll leave it on no restart. And then you can see it keeps a history of the sessions that I've run previously, and we've got one running. And I can go ahead and click on that link, which is the date. And a tuning session takes about 4 hours. And so here it's at about the 1 hour mark. And the top shows the average milliseconds per query, which we want to minimize. And the lower chart is the queries per second, which we, of course, we want to maximize. And so when you get to the end of the tuning session, you'll get an optimal configuration, right? And it found this around the 315 to 330 mark. Now, the UI is slick because what you can also do is multi-select different configurations that it tried to optimize for. And if you take a look down the bottom, you can see that you can precisely which parameters, that we're trying to change to optimize your workload. So this is something that you can run periodically, maybe after you change a hardware configuration, maybe your workload has evolved, but it's completely automatic and built into Flexible Server. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is scalability. So Shirish mentioned Elastic Clusters. This is now built directly into Flexible Server. When you go to configure the server, previously there was no cluster setting at the top because everything was just one machine. But now we give you the option of a distributed cluster with distributed query execution. And so if I go ahead and select Elastic Cluster, it's also going to prompt me for how many nodes that I want. But I'm going to skip actually straight over and show you how the code works. To use Elastic Clusters at scale, you start by just creating a traditional Postgres table. And subsequently, you'll go ahead and create a distributed table. This is using the Citus extension under the covers. And this will shard data out either by rows, or a different query can shard by schemas across the cluster as well. Best way to show any database scale is through a perf test. So on the left, we've got a single node flexible server, and on the right, we've got an elastic cluster running. And what you can see is the exact same workload on the left runs about 60-odd thousand transactions per second. And on the right-hand side, we're sustaining over 130,000 transactions a second. So there is a limit to what one machine can do for you. Now the flexible server can also scale out horizontally for distributed cluster-based execution. You've got a new lever to scale your workload in place. And finally, let's talk about AI. So I want you to pay attention to the prompt on the left. Water leaking, prominent, legal, and then Washington. They're the key terms to take away here. And you can see at the top, I could choose vector, semantic, or GraphRag plus semantic. So if I run a query against that first prompt on the left, I'm going to get some results, and that's going to be a straight vector search on the index in Postgres. And you can see that we get some results, but if you look at it and you've got to squint a little bit, the relevance isn't great. It's really only talking about water. And so if I change my technique now to use the semantic ranker, where I'm going to re-rank the results from my vector search using a model, this is better. Now I get water leakage. But if I use GraphRag, which enables me to model cases and how they relate to each other, which with a prominent case has a lot of references, this looks great. I'm getting water leakage, and right in the middle of that red box, you can see City of Bremerton, which is in Washington, and of course it's cited as a prominent case. So this is a great example of how you can combine different search techniques in Postgres to maximize the recall of your app and give the best relevance into the LLMs. Now, I'll show you the code and how this actually works. This is the simple query for running a vector search. It just uses a cosine distance operator in the order by clause. The second query then adds a call out to Azure ML. Oh, missed it. And then the third query shows the Cypher query in GraphRag, where we're counting the annotations, the relationships between the cases. So it's all SQL. If you can write SQL into a database, you can use all of these capabilities in Postgres. All right, back to you, Shirish.
Thank you, Charles. And before we wrap up, I have one more announcement here. I want to talk about an innovative PostgreSQL offering that really is built for modern applications, Neon Serverless PostgreSQL. This is a fully managed serverless Postgres instance that has some amazing developer-friendly features. Features such as scalability. Of course, it can scale quite high, but can also scale all the way down to 0. It has abilities to branch your data seamlessly, so your team members can collaborate effectively on data changes and collaborate with the CI/CD characteristics of your apps, etc. I'm thrilled that Neon Serverless PostgreSQL is coming to Microsoft Azure in the form of Azure Native Integration. So with this, developers can basically deploy the Neon organizations directly from within Azure portal without having to worry about the usual challenges of billing, security, compliance, etc. because this is now natively integrated into Azure. So I just want to give a shout out to Neon Serverless Postgres here. Look, this sort of is the way that we wanted to commit to PostgreSQL. There's a lot of improvements here. Really thrilled about PostgreSQL's progress here in Azure. Now, next up, we want to ensure that our crown jewel, Azure SQL Database, is not falling behind. We are innovating deeply here to make sure that your high-performing application can be built on Azure Database, Azure SQL Database as well. On that note, this is a major release. We are bringing native vector data types in public preview into SQL Database. Today morning, Satya and Scott talked about it. You can clap if you want. So native vector data type is coming to Azure SQL Databases. And we're making sure that you can build your scalable AI applications deeply within Azure SQL. And this combines with the rest of the enterprise promises of SQL, which is really great at. And in addition to that, we're also bringing some built-in functions. Functions such as vector distance, which takes 2 vectors as inputs and calculates the distance with some specified distance metrics. Things such as that, built-in functions, native vector data types, really make the already existing enterprise-grade database into the destination for your next generational AI application. And if there's one thing that the SQL crowd agrees on is about the importance of indexing. So whenever we add a new data type, of course, we have to follow through and add indexing capabilities as well. So no wonder we are bringing Discanon. Of course, you guessed it right. It's the same Discanon that we just talked about in the context of PostgreSQL. That's going to come to Azure SQL as well. And so when it comes there, Discanon is a proven entity. It's basically working on multiple billions of data points for our flagship features such as Bing, Office, and many such enterprise-grade offerings, and it really fits well within the enterprise envelope of SQL. So that's coming, letting you build safe, secure, and highly accurate generative AI applications. I want to move further from the AI to the SaaS part. And we've heard a lot about SQL databases coming to Fabric today. Satya talked about it, and Arun also mentioned about it. I just wanted to just allude to the fact that this is truly a groundbreaking, new kind of a cloud scale database that basically brings the power of transactions and analytics wrapped into the SaaS platform of Fabric. Your application development should be streamlined now with this autonomous databases, easy to deploy, hassle-free to manage, a lot of AI built into the system as well. So a lot of cool things that are coming into Fabric here, and databases kind of make it a unified data platform now, moving beyond a unified analytics platform. One of the other announcements in this same vein here is integration of Microsoft Fabric with Microsoft Purview's information protection, thereby extending the centralized policy governance mechanism for all Fabric items, including operational databases. With this, Fabric can basically automatically deploy policies that helps prevent data exfiltration and make sure that we meet the needs of the regulatory compliance requirements. So there's lots that's happening on both AI front as well as SaaS front. We've also announced SQL 2025. SQL is innovating on the ground, in the cloud, as well as in Fabric as well. So there's tons of concepts here. Maybe I'm going to call on the stage an expert who can pull it all together and show how this comes together. So I have somebody here. Bob.
Thank you, Shirish. Thank you so much. Shirish gave me a challenge before I came to Ignite. He said, Bob, can you do a vector search? Can you do a vector search in SQL Database in Fabric, Azure SQL Database, and SQL Server 2025? I said, challenge accepted. Let's show you how. I'm going to start with SQL Database in Fabric. You probably saw in the keynote a website like this. A Contoso Wireless company needed to actually build kind of like an AI app for shopping purposes. What I want to show you is a little bit of the code behind the scenes in Fabric, what actually powers this. So I'm here in the new Fabric SQL editor. You can see I've got a table for my products and actually a table for embeddings to store vectors. I kind of want to explore that a little bit, so I'm going to use the new Copilot functionality in the editor to put a small comment in and let Copilot generate a query for me to actually do that exploration. I'm already saving time now by using Copilot. I can see now already, I can see product names, descriptions, stock quantities, and the generated embeddings for vectors. Well, how do I actually generate these embeddings in SQL? This is really the magic. I've got a SQL stored procedure, and in here, I'm going to use a system proc that we've built inside the engine to do a REST call to talk to Azure OpenAI. I've built a secure model now that I can control permissions of who accesses that proc to talk to OpenAI. Then I'll take that embedding, or I'll take that embedding stored as a vector type and put that in my table. Well, how to do the vector search itself? I got another SQL procedure to do that. I'll generate embedding for the prompt fed to the procedure. Then I'll use a new vector distance function to compare that embedding with the embeddings in the table. Hey, it's SQL Server, so I'm going to actually add a filter to this to do a true hybrid search. Now I can simply just run this procedure. I can actually now power the application, even use the new GraphQL capabilities in Fabric Database to go power that web application. Well, that's great. What about Azure SQL Database? Well, I've got developers in this case that are going to use hyperscale. They don't want to affect the operational database, so they're going to go ahead and do vector searches on a read replica, which is automatically built into hyperscale. I, as a developer, love Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to use the MS SQL extension to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to look at the table I have here to store my vectors. I'm going to run the same query to go explore what's in the table. Product name, description, quantities, and actual generated vectors. And I actually have the same type of procedures to help me go do vector searching. Is this looking a little boring to you? Well, it's supposed to be boring. It's supposed to be the same SQL code to run this, whether you're in Database in Fabric or in Azure SQL Database. I'll run the same procedure as I did before to go and actually kind of go look and generate a prompt for my application and get back my results. Now, I'm a developer, and I love GitHub Copilot. So I'm going to go into GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio Code and say, can you build me a small code fragment to get started here to generate my actual application? Sure enough, I'll put a natural language statement in there to help me go build a small C# app that is on top of that stored procedure. A great consistent story already. SQL Database in Fabric, Azure SQL Database. Well, what about SQL Server 2025? I am using the new SSMS 21 with a Copilot. Yes, Copilot on premises for the first time. Thank you very much. Here you go, SSMS team, right? Let's go. Love it. So in here, I'm going to ask Copilot, help me connect to an AI model. Now, this is what's coming for the future for SQL across all properties. And it's something called a model definition. So I don't have to run that REST code anymore. I can just create a model definition and use that to talk to AI models. And look here, in SQL Server, I'm going to do it all on premises. I'm going to create a model definition for the popular framework Ollama. You can use this model definition to even talk to Azure OpenAI if you want to, ground to cloud. And this will show up in all SQL properties that we have. And just as before, I can go in and look at my product table, my product embeddings table that has the new native vector type, and I can go and explore and see what that actually looks like. It looks consistent. It's the same database, same table, same vector type, same stored procedures to look at this data. And in fact, if I go over here, I can go look at that same proc to use that same consistent vector distance function I did before. But here's what's important. Notice at the end, I'm adding other filters in SQL, which you have access today, and I call that a true hybrid search. Really great technology, so how would you do something like this? How would you use this to build an application? What if you build like an on-premises AI app? In this case, for the marketing department for Kotosa Wireless, we're going to give them an AI assistant to do ad campaigns. Everything I just showed you runs totally on premises. So now SQL can power that great story in SQL Database and Fabric, Azure SQL Database, and on premises with SQL Server 2025. It's a great story. But Shirish challenged me one other thing. He said, Bob, what about the disk and index thing I was talking about? Well, look here. I am using the new dark mode in SSMS. Woo, dark mode in SSMS. Come on, dark mode. People have been asking forever for this. But I'm going to do this and show you the new disk and index capability. So I've stored embeddings in the GT query table, and I'm going to go compare that to embeddings in what's called a graph node table. And we're about speed in the SQL team. So we put 5 million vectors in this graph node table. I'm going to come back and see how fast can I search those 5 million vectors. So I'm using what's called a new vector search function because I have a disk and index on top of that graph node table. And when I come back and I get my results, let's scroll down and see what the time looks like. How about 30 milliseconds? So we can now go after 5 million vectors in 30 milliseconds. Shirish, I don't know, did I live up to the challenge?
You did. Thank you. This is kind of the reason why we believe SQL is uniquely positioned to leverage all these cool characteristics, the flexibility at the enterprise-grade quality that you get from SQL. How many of you know about ChatGPT? Okay. Well, how many of you know that OpenAI uses Azure Cosmos DB to dynamically scale ChatGPT? Some of you, okay. Well, they do. They run on Cosmos DB. All the messages, et cetera, go through Cosmos DB. And even though we are already powering one of the most prolific AI applications in the market, there's a lot more enhancements that we're bringing to Azure Cosmos DB. First off, this KNN, you guessed it right. It is the technology that powers vector indexing in Azure Cosmos DB. It's already been in public preview. We're bringing it to GA as well. And I'm really proud that Azure Cosmos DB, the world's foremost serverless form factor with an expansive vector search. So that is now in public preview. In addition, we're expanding our search capabilities. We're bringing in 2. Hybrid search. You could combine vector search with that of BM25-based text ranking for highly relevant and contextually accurate results. Text search. That's coming too, with support for features such as stemming and tokenization. I'm going to hurry up now and call onto stage James, who's going to show all these things in action.
Excited to share with you today some of the latest search developments that we have in Cosmos DB. Let's take a look at an example using our Python SDK. We're going to run 4 different search scenarios here. The first is a full text search using a full text contains any clause. The next is a full text score using the BM25 ranking. The next is a vector similarity search. And then finally, a hybrid search, which fuses together the BM25 score and the vector similarity search. We're going to get started and connect to our Cosmos DB resource, which we've already pre-populated with millions of scientific papers, titles, abstracts, associated metadata, and of course, the vector embeddings inline. We're going to use Azure OpenAI to generate our vector embeddings. And then we're going to define what our search term is for our search. So we're going to search for scientific papers that contain quantum particles and electron interactions. And we'll also generate the vector embeddings for those terms. And now we're ready to start our search scenarios. The first is a full text search. We'll write a simple query that selects 5 documents, projects some properties, and we're going to use a where clause for the full text contains any system function. We're going to look for these terms in the documents. When we run this, we can see that the results come back, and we indeed do have a guarantee that the results will have at least some of those search terms in the abstracts themselves. But we may be wondering if we can do a little bit better and sort the results based on irrelevancy. So if we use the text ranking with BM25, we can order by rank on our full text score. And what this is going to do is it will return the search results in the order of the BM25 scoring. And we can see an example of this here. So documents near the top have a higher relevancy score, right? They're containing more of those key terms and the key terms that are important in that document, subject to document statistics. And this really helps bring more relevant results to the top of my search. Now it's clear the output, and we can compare this against a vector similarity search. The query is similar, except this time we project the cosine similarity score, and we order by vector distance for efficient vector search using disk-ANN. It finishes in lightning speed, and we can see that it's indeed sorted in order of the cosine similarity, with the least similar results at the bottom and the most similar results at the top. Now, we can compare this now with a hybrid search. So we're going to compare the BM25 scoring with our vector similarity search and see how the results may change. Right, so we're going to order by rank in our query using the RRF function, which will fuse together the BM25 score and the vector similarity score. So we'll go ahead and run this query, and indeed we can see that the results are now no longer sorted by the cosine similarity, and that's because we're combining the semantic similarity as found from the vector embeddings and from our vector search with the text-based importance of BM25 that takes into account the frequency of important terms in the documents, right? And so according to hybrid search, we can see that the article that contains 2 particle scattering matrix is maybe the most relevant to this search term. And scrolling up, comparing against vector search, we can see that this article about nanocrystals is actually the most relevant, right? So we can see a difference here, right? The vector similarity search takes semantic understanding as dictated by the vector embedding, so your vector embedding model, and sorts the results in order of that semantic similarity. The text ranking takes into account the importance of keywords dictated by the frequency of those keywords in your documents and the rarity of those keywords in the rest of the documents as well. Combined together, they make a very, very powerful method for retrieving the most accurate data from Cosmos DB and bringing it to your applications. All right, so I'd like to bring onto the stage Bhaskar Bhatt, who's the global product lead of EY, and I'd love to hear about the AI applications that they're building on Azure and powered by Azure Cosmos DB. Bhaskar?
Yeah. So how AI can transform the real-world strategy and transformation? The latest advancements in technology is actually disrupting the way the typical M&A journey used to be done, right from building the strategy to diligence to the transformation. And it's all fueled by data. So what we have done in partnership with Microsoft is we have built a harmonized data layer, which is comprising from transaction data coming from our procured data source. You name any vendor in the world, we have the data from there. Then we have augmented that with EY's proprietary knowledge. The decades of our engagement with clients has given us very valuable insights in different sectors, and we have packaged that and augmented that further with the web data, the news, the company filings. So we have got all that together, and then powered by the latest and greatest in AI technologies, we have summarized it in a form that it is providing very sector-specific real-time insights to our practitioners, which is not only transforming the way they work, but at the same time they are helping them transform their clients.
That sounds really powerful. So, and you've built this sort of unified data platform to surface this, right?
Yeah. So EY Competitive Edge, we have the Edge suite of platforms. So Competitive Edge gives the competitive edge to our strategy practitioners. So as you see at the bottom, there is this harmonized data layer. So what you can do is using the plain natural language, you can follow where the money is looking at the transactions. You can identify potential acquisition targets, potential partnership scenarios, and then you can look at the company ecosystem, you can narrow it down, you can do a competitor analysis, and what we do is we have got data in terms of what is happening in a particular sector, divestment, investment, the patents, and it gives the competitive edge these practitioners need for strategy.
Sounds like a huge value prop for EY and for your customers. So what role does Cosmos play here?
Cosmos actually came as a fundamental, I would say, lifesaver, because one of the things that these practitioners need is accuracy. They can't build strategy on hallucination. So Cosmos DB is our fundamental vector database, and using the Azure functions, along with Cosmos DB and with the right predefined cosine similarity search, we were able to manage this hallucination. And now we are at a stage that we are scanning terabytes of data, several terabytes of data, but in terms of performance, we are still able to solve some of the very complicated queries in less than, on an average, 20 seconds time frame.
Yeah.
So that was a game changer.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Bhaskar. Really great having you here.
Thank you.
I'll give it back to Shirish to wrap up for us here.
Thank you, both of you. Yeah, last but not least, I want to talk about the innovations that we're bringing in the AI and SaaS pillar for Azure Database for MySQL. Thrilled to announce 9.1, so the Oracle has introduced something called Innovation Release, and we are bringing that now in public preview to our database for MySQL. We also want to show how we work together with AI search. One of the questions that comes a lot to me is when to use operational databases, when to use AI search. It's simple as the following. If your data is in operational, you're building in operational applications, we want to make sure that you could build the generative AI applications inside the database. If you want to do more advanced searches, if you want to combine the data of operational stuff, if you want to do basically an unstructured data, et cetera, then AI search is good. We really partner very closely. To show it all together, I'm going to call on stage Aditi, who's going to show the final demo of this session.
Thanks, Shirish. Hey, everyone. To thrive in this era of AI, the ability to store and operate on vectors is the holy grail. With MySQL version 9.1 Innovation Release, you can now add AI wings to your MySQL instance. It's as simple as navigating to the Azure portal and creating your Azure database for MySQL Flexible Server instance, selecting version 9.1 as the server version, and inputting in the rest of the server details. Let's go ahead and create our instance. Now that the server is provisioned, I'm going to navigate to the databases blade and create a new test database. Next, via PowerShell, I'm going to connect to the MySQL instance that we just successfully deployed. As you can see, the server version is 9.1. I'm going to go ahead and create a table with 2 vector data fields. And now, I'm going to insert high-dimensional vector data here and retrieve the consequent vector embeddings easily, fueling AI experimentation with MySQL. Moving ahead, imagine a world where you could get your favorite dish right out of the oven at a click of a button, without worrying about the ingredients or the recipe. Well, while I leave you to yearn for that oven, we at Azure have simplified how you can deploy your Magento applications without breaking a sweat about the underlying infrastructure or deployment. Let's take a look. We've published a one-click ARM template to deploy your e-commerce application on Azure. This deploys all resources right from Azure AKS to Azure CDN to the flexible server in a secure setting. The deployment steps are as simple as following through few prerequisites and clicking on the Deploy to Azure button here. This button is going to take us to a custom Magento template deployment, where I'll be putting in few critical input details so that all the stitched components can be deployed, such as the Magento blueprint, the Redis cache, and the MySQL Flexible Server version 8.0, which is the most popular version for your enterprise workloads. Let's go ahead and trigger this deployment. Now that the deployment is successful, I'm going to navigate to the AKS workload that is hosting our Magento application. And right here, I'm going to click on the external IP, and voila, my online store is up and running in minutes. Let's take a look as to how search materializes on my online store. I'm going to type in a very simple prompt, suggest me a few products for carrying my stuff for a workout. Let's see how that goes. Hey, I don't think any of the items here can fit in my gym towel, to say the least. Well, I think it's time to add some RAG-based intelligence to my application. Building on integrations with the MySQL Indexer, Azure OpenAI, and Azure AI Search, I'm now going to add an interactive Copilot experience to my application. The semantic search powered by the recommender Copilot here has finally listed all the products that are here. And I've finally gotten my store to be intelligent and thinking on its feet, all in-house, powered by Azure. Thank you, everyone. Back to you, Shirish.
Thank you, Aditi. Awesome. So, I want to wrap this by talking about the final pillar here, about being integrated into data estates. So one of the things when you think about integrated data estates, hybrid is super important. We've touched on the importance of Arc. It's really important to manage, govern, and secure data estates in a seamless way. And so we're continuing to innovate quite a bit in the Arc spectrum as well. Moving further, we have a lot of announcements here. I wanted to give one shout out to one of our partners, Stream. The slide is kind of all over the place here, but Stream is one of our partners who is bringing SQL Server mirroring to Fabric. So through a SQL to Fabric product, it's in Marketplace, it's in public preview. So you could basically enjoy the mirroring capabilities of all SQL Server instances all the way from 2016 to 2025. So please go online to Stream, check it out. I think they are offering a 30-day free trial as well. A lot of questions to me are about when are you bringing mirroring for SQL Server on-prem? You heard about generic mirroring, open mirroring in the Fabric world, but we also have these partners who basically do an amazing job to get better insights. And we're also announcing a lot of cool things in the mirroring. We are GAing our SQL database mirroring, and we're also bringing mirroring to SQL MI. And that note, a lot of good pointers here. We could basically take a picture of this QR code for all the AI innovation that we are doing, helping you to get educated and innovate significantly with Ola Motion. And then finally, on behalf of my entire team here, I just want to take a moment to thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure. I really hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions at Ignite. There's a lot of database sessions. Don't forget to join them. Thank you.